I'd like to call the meeting in order and we'll start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Michelle.
Jeremy McCard,
Here.
Roseanne Bozak,
Here.
Sarah Odman.
Here.
And then do I have to call everybody else even though they're absent?
Are they on the Zoom?
Nick is, yeah. Nick Loving,
Here.
and you said I do for the absent.
Marge would usually say the name and then state that they're not here, so that way it's on the record that they're not here.
Okay. Bernie Poprod is absent. Nicole Migalorni is absent and Travis Dunlap is absent.
Probably.
You two are gonna be just.
Yep.
Approval of minutes from January 3rd, 2022.
Second.
Trying my job.
Roseanne Bozak,
Yes.
Nick Loving,
Yes.
Sarah Eldman,
Yes.
Jeremy McCard.
Yes. Communication bills and expenditures. The first thing going on here is town code updates. Michelle, is that the town code updates? I assume that we're speaking of the changes that this board made.
Yes.
Approved by the council, correct?
Yes, it passed on first reading. And the second reading will be in the meeting for February.
Okay, and there's nothing else that we should be aware of from other boards,
No,
to your knowledge at least? Okay. Report of officers, committee and staff. Jack, anything? Report. Okay. Got nothing.
What I have, we can talk about later when we get to the first container.
Very good. Nick, did you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. We're gonna jump around real quick. I have here under new business number 2 for Matt Henry in reference to a sewer easement. Mr. Henry's present. Would you like to stand up, state your name, your address, and explain to us what's going on?
All right, my name is Matt Henry. The address we're talking about is 1134 Augustus Lane. So I bought the property, and as you can see on, I guess it'll be the third page, the sanitary sewer easement that is platted currently runs kind of right through the yard. The neighbor who is on 4, he already put his in, and he ran it along the road. So I had it resurveyed, and that shows on the last page where they're gonna propose to move it to where it actually is
Okay.
in the ground currently,
So on page 4, the way it's shown, that's actually where it's actually existing right now.
that's where it's existing right now, yes.
Okay, so you're just trying to record the change that how it exists.
Yep. And that is it.
Or you got anything on
I do, I have a question. So one of my questions is, with this proposed easement going along where the installed line is there any of that actually crosses out of utility easement? It looks like there's a little section where it says 70.46, just above, just to the north of lot 4.
7046.
That's a foot line, like right here. Does anybody else want to ask? You know?
I don't have a picture. Can I get one of these?
So, hey, sir, if it helps you on this, that entire easement that they're building since it was replatted is actually, and this was, I don't know if we have engineers on or not, but that easement, the reason it was placed and vacated was when they replatted this subdivision, that run is actually a private line. So that easement is, when we call it an easement, it's actually being loosely used because it's actually a private access for them.
Okay,
We as the town would not control or have use for that easement, as ours stops at the tap, which is at the manhole at Gustafson,
okay.
in that area. So if that helps you kind of paint the picture on why they moved it. Actually, it's nicer the way it's moved because now both those laterals, will call them, or sewer taps are in line. So, but the simple question from what I reviewed, didn't look like they both fell within what they're calling that dedicated easement.
Okay, so the section then, Bill, do you have a copy of this?
I did not bring it, but I'm looking at
She's
this.
talking about right
Okay.
here, kind of just
Yeah,
shoots over, but this line keeps going to his tap.
Who owns that little,
It's a private road, correct?
So is it, that whole, that's a part, okay, so
who
that
owns
whole,
that property though that it goes through?
I own the lot 3.
Yes, no, I don't mean that part, I'm sorry, down where I was mentioning, where that little section goes outside of,
This,
Outside of the dark line,
yeah,
like where the curve is.
yes.
yeah, that is not developed yet. That's lot 4, right?
yeah, lot of work.
Lot 4 is
Well-
developed.
Sorry, not developed. That line is where it's existing. And it goes up and then follows up where the existing easement is that he's proposing.
So also you kind of can see, if we're looking horizontal, there's almost like I'm just trying to show you. Because this is an easement too, that's gonna go to 2 other lots. Yes.
I remember seeing that.
So that's an easement also. So as soon as that breaks into here, this is all considered easement here.
Okay, so,
Right?
but who owns this
I
section?
think like the question is, so it's lot 4 curves over here, and then.
Can I interject in here?
Absolutely.
Please do.
Yeah, isn't that, I think what you're asking, and I don't know if I have the right answer, but I think what you're asking is that area to the lot, to the east of lot 4, where it's like not
Yes.
labeled.
Yes.
Isn't that the drainage, like isn't that owned by, say, either the developer of Trail Creek Phase 1 or maybe even the HOA? I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Yeah, isn't that the detention pond parcel for Trail Creek Phase 1?
Say that last part again, Jeanette.
Isn't that the detention pond parcel for Trail Creek Phase 1? I'm gonna look that up while we're here on the phone. I mean, while I'm during the meeting, I'm gonna look that up.
Lot 4, you mean?
No, to the east of lot 4.
Okay, that could be, but I mean, where if you see the dark line that is the private driveway, then it ends, and there's a section between that and the designated lot line that does, it appears that nobody owns it, but the sanitary line goes through it. Who would be responsible for that piece?
That should be part of the PUD, right? Right, Jeanette?
I think that's what she said, she's checking where the line.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up, but I believe I actually believe that is part of Trail Creek Phase 1, but let me, give me a minute to look that up.
Sure.
Either way though, this is outside of his lot, which is lot 3. So if there is any issues with that, that's something that has already been put in place that is gonna have to be taken up with somebody else.
Well, I just wondered if.
I mean, it's a great question,
If our
but I think
easement had
that,
not been, if the easement is sufficient, not only to protect Mr., sorry, it's Henry. Henry, so, but also just,
yeah, I think it's good to know. I just don't think it's gonna affect him,
Okay.
like ultimately here.
Okay, that was one question. If we make a change here, do we have to have this go for public hearing? Because it's affecting the PUD.
Yes, I was told by Jim that it would have to be. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's why they told them they had to come here.
Yeah, I thought it was just, when we were talking before, it was just gonna be in 3, but if it's crossing into that other, the PUD property, it's gonna have.
I guess kind of what you're saying though, the easement that we're talking about is just 3, right? I
Correct,
mean,
but
why-
when a change to PUD is made, which would include that easement, then often, and I don't know 100% of the time, but you have to notify all the people owners within 300 feet and have a public hearing to accept your change, or the change.
I guess my question, and here's my clarification. So what you're changing, this is already in place, correct?
Yeah, the neighborhood, yeah,
And this was all put in by the owner of lot 4, is that?
correct.
So I don't know how we can make the owner of lot 3 get a public hearing to make a change that is already, like, somebody else did this.
Correct. I
So
understand that.
I don't know how, I think that would be something that would have to be gone back on the person who put it in already. That they need to follow the proper process, because anything that's outside isn't of his doing at all.
I understand that. This isn't an argument with what he's asking for. It's just making sure that we procedurally cover all the right bases. Because he also doesn't want somebody to come back and say, well, now you got to change it.
I agree, my question
Put
is,
it in there like that, how did that,
That's a
how
pretty
did?
great
Right,
question.
that's what we need to do.
I think my question is, he's the proper person that should be having the public hearing. Because he doesn't have any authority to allow or outside of that easement.
Yeah, the easement itself doesn't even cross into the, what do you call it, I forget, what are you guys referencing, the PU?
The PUD, plan unit development, how it was laid out on the overall plan.
Bill, if you got insight.
Yeah, I mean, actually, he's trying to do justice because technically, if he wanted to, he could just come in and vacate that easement. Then it wouldn't need a public hearing.
Right.
So he could have just asked for a vacate of that existing easement and not even cared about recording that because it's already there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, I absolutely do.
So really, he's trying to do justice by saying, I want to do this and make it recorded on a plat, where really his responsibility lies with, because he wants to put his home there, is just vacating that easement that is not needed.
So that he doesn't have to have the setbacks and stuff from the easement as well.
Well, and to build a property
Yeah.
over what was there as an
Right.
easement recorded. So, and you're right, I mean, the reason we're doing this is also to help position his home where he wants it to meet setbacks.
John, I don't know if that's gonna be there yet, but.
And I did look on the GIS and that area, I don't know if I can share my screen with you or, which I'll try, but that area that I'm talking about is owned by Trail Creek LLC. So, because it's part of, Trail Creek Phase 1, it's their detention pond parcel. So it's not able to be developed into anything else. I would think that, if you're asking about, the ability to put an easement over that, then you would have the developer weigh in on that as well. If I'm thinking correctly, maybe your attorney can weigh in on that. But let me see if I can share my screen with you.
Probably the proper person would be the developer. He allowed, before 3 was built, he let whoever.
Well, right, he was the owner of property 3 when it went
When
in.
it went in, and now it went in the wrong area.
The roads were also put in.
I'm not sure if the developers did this.
So I'm not.
Developers got here.
Well,
Right.
yeah, the only issue, so I guess my thing would be, no matter what, the developer owns the property while that was constructed and then sold said property to him.
That
So,
actually wasn't true. I've owned it for a while now.
okay.
Oh, okay.
So you owned it while this was put in?
I owned it and then they put it in.
Okay, I was confused. Thank you for the
But I guess
clarification.
I'm still getting back to like, the easement that I'm proposing literally only takes care of lot 3.
I understand, I see what you're
Okay.
saying with that, yes,
Okay.
true. I just don't know if we're supposed to.
Yeah, I hear you.
In order to have it recorded and all that stuff, I just don't know the answer.
So he does.
And I would not like you to get in a position where we allowed it and somebody comes after you.
I mean, the thing would be the CYA, it would be just over public hearing. I mean, if Shim says, Shim knows the ins and outs better than I do, and if he's saying we should.
Okay.
But I believe that Jeremy's point about who's responsible for the expense of the public hearing
Right,
is an excellent as well.
yeah, and it should be, I mean,
Because then, if he's gonna have a public, like, if he's gonna have a public hearing, I mean, the reality is that he can really only speak to that which he owns is gonna be property 3. Anything beyond that is not in his interest, right?
yes,
So anything, I mean, somebody else would have to do that, so the grand scheme of things is the developer, which I believe is Patrick Leahy, right? Would he be the best person to be?
I would say he's the best person because he's the developer. But like I said, if he owned lot 3 when it was put in, but who gave permission? I mean, that's ultimately who put that in there and so if Clay put it in, then he should be the one holding the public hearing because he messed up and didn't follow the easement.
I don't believe that he put that.
And if it was Anderson, Derek Anderson, then he should be putting it in, or he should be holding the public hearing because he messed it up.
Right.
Uh,
Question is too, is it already done because it's recorded?
Is
So
what already done.
was this already recorded and was there a hearing done? Has anybody checked that? I mean, because this is recorded on a plat in order to, it had to have plan commission signature.
Right,
Well,
that's what I was thinking.
exhibit A was the original, which shows the easement here.
Right.
So I think exhibit, and this is what they're asking to change, and they've got their affidavit. So I believe that
Oh, okay, I'm looking.
this is what's recorded.
I was looking at the wrong one too.
So I think we're finding a number of loose ends here.
It's showing his easement already there though, too, right? That's his line.
Well, that's it. This is just a, what's that?
That's the easement.
That is an easement, 10 foot. I mean, he goes here and then cuts over to his house.
So I think that may have already been recorded.
This is the. This is what I planned.
Yeah. So you
I mean, could I just try to vacate this now? Not worry about it.
that could be two.
Sorry, you asked a question and we were talking.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, yeah, you're good. Am I able to just vacate this one now?
Unfortunately, you don't have the most experience, right? Remember.
I don't know anything about it either. But
Right, I mean, I don't think that we're saying that you did anything wrong or you did, I think at this point, we're just trying to determine how did what happened without going through the board, if that's already in place.
yeah, so here's where,
That's what I think we're discussing, that really
I
doesn't
mean,
have anything to do with you, it just has to do with the.
just, yeah, a little back, I mean, I probably started this maybe October when I first came to you. And this is, and I know things have changed with people and whatnot. I'm going in 2-3 weeks to figure out where I'm putting my house and then submit the permits and stuff, so.
I guess the one question that would be the breakwater on this is, if you make a change to a PUD, does it have to go for a public hearing?
Yes,
So then even to, whether he vacates it or we do a new easement, it will need to have a public hearing put up by somebody.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Now, if it's to vacate it, then it would be him, because it's just a his. And if it's for moving this now, we're gonna, it's one of the 3 of them.
Mhm.
And who is that? I don't know.
Whoever did what they wanted to do without going board approval first.
I mean,
Right, I mean, that's what I would say,
Yeah.
yeah, they're the ones that screwed it up.
But is it, but do we, yeah, how, is there a way to find out who authorized it and who did it? Or is it gonna be, I didn't do it, you did it, I didn't do it. he
I'm
did
sure
it,
he's
kind of
gonna,
thing.
he wasn't consulted.
But between the other two people,
It's
that's
the
what I
other two
meant.
people,
Okay,
and each one of them is gonna probably deny it.
Right, that's what I mean, is there a way to find out?
I know Clay put the road in. And he didn't put it in the correct spot, but, and I know Derek put the easement sewer.
He put the sewer line in,
I mean, I don't know if he
but,
directed it.
okay, so.
so I guess the big issue is, does anyone see a problem with where, and in exhibit B where it is? I don't know of anything that it causes a problem by being where it is. That's my first question before we go any further,
I don't see any issues with it. We're
I haven't seen issues with the place.
other than clerical issues. Right?
Right.
Okay. You said you're going in a few weeks as far as placement for the home,
We're
right?
gonna start the process, yes.
So I assume based on where that is that. Knowing that, let's say that that's gonna be fine where its location is, that won't hold you up if we. Turn around and have this stuff for public hearing, right? Cause I mean,
As long as the
I don't,
permit is, like we submit the permit and they say, okay, you're good.
right, cause the only issue with the public hearing is gonna be just making sure that. Cause I assume that
I
no
don't think
tap,
he can get a permit though with the placement.
If the easement's where it's at right now, and he goes and puts a permit, he's gonna be could be too close to the easement, he won't have the setbacks right. So he won't be issued a permit until we change this.
too close to the easement.
Well, his house will be on top of it, actually.
Or on the easement.
Where approximately are you hoping to
Isn't this-
position your house?
The front corner is probably gonna be right on where the easement's at.
I see.
Until we get with the setup here.
Well, I'm looking at this one,
If it's the way it is, I'm in the house like right here.
because.
Front corner.
But if this is moved and you what to do, if you do this, then you're gonna stay, either way, you're staying off the easement.
With where this is shown.
That's the point that they're asking.
Yeah, I mean, so it's almost like if it would be allowable, like, it's not gonna get any worse.
Could you show us where you're hoping to place your house?
That's why there's one over.
We're not getting, making things up.
So if you look at this one, the problem would be
Look, there's one
I
there.
don't see much money over.
in that front corner.
I see.
Or you can be within the 10 feet. So obviously when this is here, then you got.
Yeah, so as it is now, it's not real close to the front.
Where the line's at now, you're talking about, right, Tara?
Yes.
Which there's no line there. In the ground, it's just
Sewer,
paper.
sewer line.
No, there's nothing in the ground right now,
No, but the
just on paper,
recorded plat though,
Yes.
which is your
just these.
legal,
Shows it there.
You know, it's gonna be really easy.
Still, I'd rather get all this trouble out of the way first. Make
Like I
everything
said,
else.
honestly, it was October,
So,
I
like-
think you, and it's like, man.
So ultimately for you, like looking at this, the best case scenario that, I mean, obviously the best case scenario is you're just like, do whatever you want to do, but obviously that's not how all this works, unfortunately. So the public hearing, like if we make you set a public hearing, or we suggest that you set a public hearing, that's gonna set you back, is what we're looking at, right? Because potentially you'd have to be at this meeting next month.
Yeah, but
But at the same time,
What
with
if
where the pipe's actually at, where it's actually ran, that's gonna affect where you place your house.
where it's already been run, won't affect his house.
correct.
Is that there could be legal issues if he places it on top of an easement. And technically, we can't allow him to have a permit with a house placed on top of the utility. Just- Because that's not even accessory structure.
Well, if my attorney tells me that we can't make a change to a PUD without a public hearing, I think that's what we have to do no matter what. And I think delaying that's only gonna delay you even further if we don't set it now. Go ahead, Bill.
So one thing to consider, so it doesn't muddy the waters, if we're gonna have to figure out who's gonna be responsible for recording that, it may be best to set the public hearing for just vacation of the easement, to vacate it, and then revisit who's gonna need to record the new easement. That may save them a little bit of time.
I guess my question is, can he vacate an easement that's for the entire PUD though? Because wouldn't vacating that easement, wouldn't that affect the other properties?
No.
Just
So would he have the authority to do that?
Yeah, because if it was just his property, the easement would still be where it is on 4,
Yeah, you're just
Okay.
looking for lot
Yeah.
3.
it would just be on his.
Because it doesn't go into lot 4.
Now, he's not going to be able to tap into the sewer until the new easement is recorded. But that doesn't stop him from pulling a building permit per se. By the time he gets to sewer aspect of it, that easement would have to be recorded.
But even for him to pull a permit in 3 to 4 weeks or what his anticipated timeline was, we won't have that vacated yet.
No, he's gonna be set back either way.
Right, either way, he's gonna be set back till next month.
So in order to vacate it, I need to get a public hearing,
Public
even though
hearing.
it's just my lot.
But if he assumed responsibility for the easement anyways, he could go ahead and just have a public hearing to move the easement.
Correct.
Rather than vacate and then figure out who's gonna come back and do it. I mean, we're.
So I would like, that's why, rather than even messing with the vacating it, just have a public hearing to move the
Right, and the
easement.
expenses are gonna be the same if he's gotta send all the letters out to vacate as if he's gonna just move it.
I guess, and I know, again, things have changed. I guess my frustration is this started in October. It's like, I could have had, you know.
And I totally understand where you're coming from. It's just, this is the first that like we're digging into it.
Mr. President,
Absolutely, Nick, go ahead.
I would just caution the sewer easement was placed where it is in phase 2 of Trail Creek in order to facilitate the trail that's going to connect Trail Creek to the trail down Babcock Road. So you can't adjust the easement because that's where the trail is going to go. The trail sits over the top of it.
It sits over the top of the one that's on lot 3 now that goes at an angle.
Through Gustafson?
There's no trail going across the lot 3.
Does anybody have access to the main office where we've got the plat? So we can see the whole thing.
I have a key. I don't
That
know what my key is or where anything is, but I have a key.
It'd be the plat drawer. Bill, does that make sense? That we would look at that? So we, for all.
I have my key, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I have not seen where the trail's gonna lay out, so I can't comment on that.
Jack, do you know where it would be?
This is
No.
actually going on the trail.
They're all labeled
Whether.
and
use
the
this
board
or
that
use the same
says
spot.
Trail Creek,
Right, either one you use.
lot 3
begins in the same
Babcock,
spot, so that
second
wouldn't
phase
matter.
1. That's what, so it should be in there.
Okay,
The easement on your property enters and leaves at the same 2 spots, right? It's just how it curves through your property.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to his tab. So I don't, and it enters the big easement that runs east and west, so. Guessing whatever's need to be done in the future, it's just gonna run through where we would change it to. But I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Well, there's a proposed trail is what he's referring to, and it follows the sewer easements.
I thought that
Yeah,
was on
it's-
the other side of the road.
Proposed trail. That's, I thought.
I know there's some other things that have been talked about.
The one that does say proposed trail on it is actually in the original, so if it was on your lot, you would have seen. So,
Yeah, I would have seen it, I would think. But then again, it's passed, so.
I mean, it ultimately comes out, whoever put the thing in didn't follow the easement.
right,
Now, that's a problem we got.
right.
I'm happy.
I mean,
Because it should be following the road, it shouldn't go.
It should, yeah, it should.
It shouldn't go right through the middle of the yard, so I mean, but like you said, that was before you even. That
I
was.
mean, it makes more sense being where it's at, it should went with that road. Wait, but Phil, you said that the sewer line is gonna be private, that we don't have anything to do with it?
Yeah, those are all private lines that's following within that easement.
That's why I don't understand how we.
Our
So
municipal.
we don't even need it.
Well, that's, yeah.
That's right.
Well, we do if that's, if that. If the trail's gonna be built on it.
Well, yeah, the trail.
We need an
We
easement.
can't move an
for-
easement, but if that trail was
No, the
proposed to
trail-
go on top of that.
There's
be a big
a
issue.
trail going right through the middle
You
of the
need an
yard.
easement in order for the first.
I don't think
And the
it's like-
next lot to be able to access our utilities.
Yeah, and that's what it's for them to run to our tap.
Yes.
Started at, on that, putting the road in the wrong spot.
Yeah, the road was supposed to go.
Yeah. I think that's where the problem started.
This is recorded. I
Doesn't really
this is
affect-
recorded.
I thought the trail.
Because there was still back, whether he would follow it.
It could be.
So remember, there was at one point when this was gonna get developed, and there was a cul-de-sac back here, and the trail was gonna be part of it.
Make sure that things go.
I remember that.
So next month.
And that was, I think that was when Miller was in here trying to purchase the property and build that. That there was a cul-de-sac on the backside, and he was trying to run the trail was gonna run through there.
Well, it was also discussed
Cause I think it was gonna,
when
like,
Blakey had it too.
Because this lot's been sold too. It hasn't come about yet. This one was sold before 3 was sold.
Here's a trail, recreational trail easement, right?
Ah,
There we go.
so it's way all the way on the other side.
Yeah, you wanna come see this? So you can see the full
Yeah.
plan?
so Nick, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Was I on the wrong side of the lot?
Okay, so what I'm seeing is the houses on Gustafson Lane. That their backyard, like they're on the east side of Gustafson. It shows that there's a recreational path easement. To the east of their backyard, so closer towards Babcock. So it would be, like, it wouldn't involve any of these lots at all.
I just
Understood.
sent you a picture of where
Thanks
those,
for checking.
Oh, absolutely, I mean, that could have been
that would have been terrible.
not great.
This would be with the leaf right here.
That literally would have been the first thing I did.
This is the original.
Going this way, how come?
And now he buys from over here so that he can bring his house in there.
There's still the building line setback and there's still the water easement and all the regular.
So no matter what, though, we basically need to set a public hearing. Like further. Apparently it's east.
Yeah. The picture you sent.
That's why it's doing.
Yes, you're welcome. It's not a good picture.
No,
of the whole thing, but
it-
it's
just
better.
be-
Okay,
it'll-
I'm like, okay,
Something to reference.
yeah, I just wanted to show them that side.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, Roseanne, thank you for sending that image. Appreciate it.
Does that make sense to you, Nick?
Doesn't that go with that?
It does, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you look, it's my signature at the bottom of that plat. I just, I remember seeing that so many times. I just wanted to make
Well-
certain. Thank you.
I think we've had like 5 different versions of this
Oh, there.
phase 2, so it's been real confusing.
I move that we send this for public hearing next time. But I move we send this for public hearing for the change of easement location.
I have a second motion.
Can we change this to just vacate? That's all I'm
If you vacate, I don't know that you're any farther ahead.
So unfortunately, if you vacate it, I think then you're still gonna have to set the easement, because you're gonna have to do, like, you could potentially have more things to do, if I'm understanding this correctly.
It's definitely gonna fall on Pat Cleggy as a developer.
Right, but so if he vacates, it's not gonna show where anything's at, how's he gonna obtain a permit?
No, Pat needs to be involved with this.
Right, but so what I'm getting at though, if he does that, that's going to prolong his process of being able to obtain a
Oh, yeah, no,
permit.
the whole thing has to be done, you're right, it has to be vacated and recorded, the new one. Because otherwise, he's gonna be right back there with another public hearing for the change of the PUD again, of where he needs to put his sewer tap.
Because if you vacate it, you vacate it all the way back
Right,
to the stage or phase before.
correct.
So
I think there's just a miscommunication that if we just vacated it, like he'd be good to go and can move forward, right? I think it needs to be recorded as the new one, which is
I
what the
guess-
public hearing would do, to my knowledge.
So I
And
guess
then-
my question is, how did, I know there's an easement going across, but that easement stops on my lot. How was he able to build without?
He didn't do the right thing.
we don't know. We don't have that information.
But we will figure it out.
And I'm sure he didn't build where the easement was shown on his lot, and then ran the line where he did. It would be my best guess.
So the simple answer to that, not to muddy the waters, was he built his property without any utilities. And then just ran the utilities as they came, and he's still fighting with that, or I think it may be resolved
I
now.
think they got the gas and electric.
So a lot of this came after the,
But he put up his house and then we've got into all his problems.
Okay, but that brings up another question. He already has the gas and water run.
No, it doesn't. But from what I understand, that was taken out of our hands, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's gone.
it's, I don't know whether he's got gas and electric to his home. He has sewer, but he doesn't have, that was what he was coming to meetings for, and on the
I
meetings that
understand,
had to be
but-
between.
Mr., sorry, I'm.
Henry.
Henry, is just saying that it's already in. Is it in an easement?
Yeah, it's in the, along the road easement. Yep, they're within the,
Gas and water or just sewer?
I know gas, electric.
Sewer is not in the easement, because that's going.
Right, that's what we're talking about. But the gas and water, you're saying you
I know gas and electric.
have been put in.
Yep, that's what it.
And did they go in the easement that's showing as,
I know they ran kind of just along the road.
IEW easement?
They follow the road.
Pretty much follow the road. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to stick inside the easement because of where the road is, right?
Is gas and water able to be in the same easement as, our gas and electric, it will be in the same easement as water? Yes,
as long as they're spaced, I believe it's 10 foot apart.
okay, because that easement is only 10 feet.
Well, above, remember you go above and below.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's just, it's on the plat as being IEW, so I didn't know if there was some,
Trust me, they won't lay that water line there without it. Either.
so, Bill, are you saying that in order for this to go to public hearing, we actually have to get, Mr. Clay involved in this action?
I'm not an attorney or an engineer, but I slept on a Holiday Inn Express once, but I guess what I'm saying is, I believe that we're doing him justice to do it all at one time, because otherwise he's gonna be right back here again. But if the attorney believes that it should be recorded as a public hearing. I think we're just gonna do him injustice by not doing it all at one time. Meaning vacate it and record the new easement. So with that being said, I don't think that lies on him, because Pat Cleggy is still the responsible party for the PUD at this point, because it's still under development.
Okay, that's a good point. It has not been
Correct.
finalized in secondary approval.
Correct.
Is there a way that there can be a special meeting, get Pat Clayton in here and get this all ironed out before we come to the public
I
hearing?
think it's a phone
Yeah.
call by the building commissioner, or somebody responsible for the town that says, we have this plat, tell him to meet with him, and it needs to be recorded, and then we need to have paperwork, public hearing set for.
Correct. I mean, that would be the correct way to do it because he's ultimately the responsible party. Would be that, hey, you allowed this sewer line to go in and not on the easement, it needs to be moved and you need to take care of it.
Yeah, he's still responsible for it at this point.
Okay, so let me amend my motion. This goes to public hearing pending notification of any parties that need to be notified, including the developer of this phase. And do we need to notify, do we need to contact also the person who put it in, whoever that is?
I believe so, because they need to know that they put it in not on the easement. And they're.
Yeah,
So that we would get from the permits.
Mhm.
I would think that they had to have a permit to put that line in. And if they didn't, that's a whole other issue again also.
Yeah, we need to see this whole process, what the heck happened during it.
So I'm asking you.
So building commissioner, I believe we would need to pull the file, see when that permit for the, if there was a
It was not
permit.
a permit pulled for sewer. And to my knowledge, I'd have to look back further before I came on board, but
But yes,
To
go
my
back into the
knowledge.
file before you came on and see what was,
There was, because we did the inspection on it.
okay, so then somewhere along the line, there's
somebody pulled.
some
the permit for
paperwork.
Yeah, he would have pulled a sewer permit, a tap permit.
that. So it's all,
So now, what I don't recall, because I slept since then, was did we just inspect the tap or did we inspect the whole lateral? Because typically we don't inspect the,
latter, what came to it.
right, so it would be interesting to see that part, but
So,
I think with that line ran, if I remember right, because of the length, we wanted to inspect it to make sure it had the proper fall to continue so it don't go septic. Now, part of that inspection does not show a private easement or an easement within that, if it was even recorded at that point, or was it just point of sight from here to the tap? So. That may have been the
so
problem.
we're going to have to look into the file, see what the paper trail is, no matter how far back it goes or who was involved. And go from there. So pending that information, notification of the developer and any other parties that need to be contacted. That this could go, I would move that this would go to public hearing to vacate the easement and to reposition a new easement for the next meeting.
I'll second.
Got that, Michelle.
let me know when you're caught up there.
I'm good.
I have a motion and a second, roll call.
Yeah,
Nick Loving,
What,
discussion.
or is there any discussion? Oh, guess not.
Sarah Aldman,
Yes.
Roseanne Bozak,
Yes.
Jeremy McCarty.
Yes,
Okay, so to clarify, this information needs to be gotten to who, by when, before this hearing.
So as soon as possible.
so we
tomorrow,
need to make, we need to make
Call
contact with Patrick Leahy as soon as possible, so.
Yeah, I would say when you get in tomorrow, I would start looking, unless you have a schedule somewhere you're supposed to be, someone's waiting for you. I would say the first thing you do tomorrow is find those permits.
I have inspections first thing tomorrow, but as soon as. I
Yeah,
get that
right,
done,
you
then
know.
I'll-
Because his alternative would be that he has to replace it on the existing, which isn't good for you. But it'd be far cheaper just to pay all the stuff to.
And just get, well, it's the same thing we get, but again, we're operating on a PUD. where does our jurisdiction start and stop? Because this is
Well, either way, it has to be recorded.
it has to be recorded, I understand that. So I've looked into most of these records and read them. The problem is when this was brought to the board before, there was no set precedence on who's responsible for gas, water, electric. It all went into the PUD, but there's nothing spelling it out who's responsible for it, so.
But in
Well, I
this
can-
case,
I can
whoever
tell-
put in that line,
I can tell you that whoever put in this line, not within the
Is gonna be
recorded
responsible.
easement, is responsible for this issue.
That's what
And then
we're-
if they don't want to come here and handle this, then
then-
they can civilly probably be responsible for moving it within the recorded easement. You know, sure, he doesn't want to wait for that.
I don't want it done, period, right?
Right. But what I'm saying is that expense would be far greater than spending a little bit of time to get this gentleman moving forward. And just,
So who all needs, okay, so public hearing. Let's go back to that, what the heck?
we're gonna make, so you're gonna need to be here.
Yeah,
okay, so a public
I-
hearing, there's a number of steps, they are outlined in the town code. I believe that Michelle, who is our secretary, has a packet of information that you would get, and that outlines everything, so you make sure you cover every item. One of the things that, we've all said something about notifying the people. You will go to the county's GIS system, and Michelle in the packet has a way for you to go through the steps. You find everybody that's 300 feet of your property, and they get the notices, and you bring, all your documents and stuff. So that would be part of that. The thing we don't know yet is who actually is gonna be responsible for that.
That should be Pat.
all of us do it.
So if you can give us like, we're gonna, I mean, tomorrow we can get, Jack's gonna get whatever he can get, and I'm sure we could probably have that by sometime early afternoon-ish. He's got other things he's gotta do first, but once we have that, if we can reach out to Patrick Leahy, if he agrees to do all this, then obviously we can make contact with you and let you know that, hey, Patrick Leahy's gonna take care of this. You're still gonna be here at the next meeting because you are an involved party. And then,
But honestly though, if it's stuff, if he just shows up, I'll take care of everything else. I don't wanna put it on there, I want to do it all myself, so I know it's done.
okay,
Otherwise, I know I'll get it done, so.
no, I
That's fine.
appreciate that. And I think that's an awesome way to do things because at least it'll be done right. And then you'll be able to move forward after this.
So do all those people that I get paperwork, they can show up if they want to, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then it's, if they don't show up, I mean, they're voting on it, right?
No, they're.
No.
They just have a chance to go-
Complaint.
Oh,
They can speak
Yeah.
for or against your action. So for instance,
Yeah.
the owner of lot 4 will probably be speaking for the action because they would like to have their utilities in an easement. Or, it generally often, there's not a lot of, people
But I get-
show up, but there could be.
I guess what you're saying is if it's put on Pat, then technically he's gonna have to pay to get the recording to start, right?
The recording is.
Mr. President,
yes, sir.
quick question, and I think the Attorney Brazil may have to clarify this. Because Pat Leahy, as the developer, still has responsibility and control over the PUD and the easements, what if he doesn't want to make the change?
Then I think Patrick Leahy would then be responsible to move that sewer into the easement. Because right now we ran it outside of the easement that was approved.
No, I don't think that's.
Did Mr. Leahy run it
But he's
outside the easement, or did the other lot owner?
I think Anderson put it in, but it's still ultimately, like you said, it's probably on Clay of it going in.
What I'm
Both of them
saying
are.
is, it appears as though Anderson violated the easement,
Yes.
not Leahy. And Leahy owns the easement. I'm just posing the question, and I think Attorney Brazil needs to dig into this and clarify it. What if he doesn't want to, because really he needs to make the ask to move his easement.
Right.
Actually, I did.
I don't
read some
think-
documents. It's in the easement, I believe is mine now. I signed something.
Well, I think because the PUD is still,
Active.
yeah. because
Well,
the
yeah,
PUD is
that's
still-
what I'm saying is, if Mr. Clay doesn't want to change his easement, he doesn't, he's the one that has to make this ask. I'm not even certain that the easement can be moved without him first making the ask. He's the one that has to do it.
I think that's what we came to. It's his responsibility for it. So he needs,
But I think what Nick is asking is what happens, what do we
If
do
he says no?
if he says no?
then,
So.
Like, what do what do we?
then he would be responsible for moving it back, whether it be that he allowed.
I'm sorry, point of clarification, who's he?
Oh, Pat Clay, it'd be his responsibility to put it back because he should be the one ensuring that it goes in correctly. Even if it was the owner of lot 4 who put it in, he would have to then go after him.
Wouldn't that all come from?
I think-
Not from me.
As the developer, I don't think if they run into, I just don't think that's Mr. Clay's
But
problem.
whose responsibility was it to put in the sewer line? On the easement? Not who put it in, but whose responsibility is it to put it? Is that the developer's responsibility?
To put in the mains, yes. The laterals are the homeowner's responsibility.
So if that lateral then is the homeowners, then that would be on Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's the question of who gets to even make the ask to change the easement, I think is not clear.
So, yeah, to change the easement, if the easement still belongs to the developer, he'd have to ask to move the easement. If he doesn't want to move the easement, then it's gonna go down to who put it in wrong, and then they're responsible to move it back.
Well, can I say something on that? So
Right.
I think that's where a lot is not getting understood. When I started this, saying I want everybody to understand that these are private laterals. Technically, they don't have to fall in an easement. He could shoot a lateral right through the middle of his property as long as it comes to our tap. You see what I'm saying? Am I making that, does it make sense?
Yeah, you look at any houses, they don't have easements running through their front yard.
Right, so you're essentially giving me a private lateral to our tap. So I think we're getting misfocused here between the laterals and the easement. So he put his lateral somewhere in the vicinity of the easement, which really, if it was a shorter path to run through and do a road cut, as long as he got that permission and at the end of the day ended up at our sewer tap or the main, that's what we're inspecting. That's the part that we're looking at.
So Bill, this lateral is no different than my house that sits 20 feet off the road that goes straight to the road.
Absolutely.
Is the same, we're talking about the same thing as that.
And that's what,
And that's not an easement on anybody else's property, but the issue is now, so then if he doesn't need an easement for those, because nobody needs an easement.
I guess my issue with that is so that,
The easement is for utilities.
okay,
We're not extending our main up that easement. We've already decided that. Our main is at Gustafson, and that's where they're tapping on at. All 3 of those lots are tapping in at Gustafson. So, one thing that me and Shim had, either me or Shim or me or Jeanette had a huge discussion on this at the beginning of that tap is at that easement. If we decide, that would be the planning commission, if we decided to go within that easement and extend our main, which is another whole aspect of now responsibility and infrastructure, then that becomes a different issue. Now that has to be made sure that it's within that easement.
okay, so if I understand correctly, which I didn't before, you're saying that everything that's shown here as an existing sanitation line is private,
That's a lateral, correct,
is a private lateral,
correct.
so they could run it wherever they want.
As long as it comes to that tap and it doesn't cross boundaries or property lines, like through his property.
And so,
But it
and
does.
I think the problem right now is though, no, the original easement, the one that's intact now, was to allow lot 4 to run that private line. He ran it now on his property and is invited, you know, without the right to do that. So that is where Mr. Anderson is out of. Whoever ran that didn't put it on the easement that he was allowed to, so now it goes across the line and it affects his real property.
So, Mr. Henry, he is actually being very kind and saying.
Yes, by moving it, he could be saying, get that off my property.
Yeah.
Because it's not in the easement, it wasn't put in properly. If he wanted to, he could sue to take that out.
But that would be between him and.
That would be, yeah, that'd be, but what he's asking for is to get rid of this easement here.
So I guess we don't even need to record.
I don't think there
We
needs to
do
be a
on
new
that if
easement.
they're
If
lateral.
what Bill said, if it's.
Well,
just a
that's
lateral-
that's what I'm trying to understand.
Hold on, there still has to be an easement allotted for other utilities. We
But
chose
isn't there an
not to.
existing easement?
Yeah, those are on there.
But I'm just saying, so when you're saying you don't need to record, as long as that existing easement is in place and in a proper place.
So we're just talking about sewer line.
Yeah, we're not extending the sewer main. We have no, there's been no proposal to the sanitary board to extend the main up the easement.
Where the S is at is where the.
That's where his at is.
So I guess my question is this, so this is, if this is a privately owned lateral that runs through his property, what obligation does he have to provide any setbacks or space from somebody else's lateral on his property? Or does he not have anything?
I don't think he has anything.
So I mean, potentially, is there even a need for a public hearing at that point?
Well,
Because really, we're not
he doesn't
changing
want-
anything.
He doesn't want where it is, yeah.
Right, because he needs that one gone, because there is an easement on the record,
You can't put a building permit on top of
and he can't build on top of it. But, so now the issue is that easement his, because he owns all that property, or is it still Clay's because it's still in development? If it's his, he can motion to vacate it, if not, we need Clay to vacate it.
I wish I do have, I have documentation at home on it. We did get set something separate, completely separate with that easement. And we had it signed for it or something.
So
But I don't
if you
know
could
what-
provide
Sign
that,
something
I did, yeah, me and my wife, yeah.
between you and Clay.
It's probably an affidavit of easement, so.
And then it would be, I don't think you need to record a new easement, because it's just a lateral, it's not required to be an easement. It's.
Jeanette, are you on still?
I am.
Jeanette, was that you or Shim that we spoke about that being all private, that we have no control over that other than the fact of the easement being where it's at?
I believe that was Sham, and I just want to point out though, just to make sure we're talking about, everyone's clear, that this easement in question is only for sanitary sewer, so, you know, it doesn't impact the other utilities, because they are supposed to be, I believe, in the,
Easement of the roads, right?
yeah, exactly, so,
So my question to you, Jeanette, then, since we're not moving our main up, does it even exist?
does the easement need to exist?
During the process, he doesn't have to follow through.
Our tap stops at Gustafson. Well, yeah, it does, so that way they could get their lines to our tap.
I believe that it does.
If you're just looking at normal lot though, they don't have sewer easements to attack, right?
No, but you guys are in a unique situation, because you have to cross each other's lines to get to it, property lines.
Because if he wants to move.
Where
That's more protecting him,
Yeah.
the easement was.
Because in a regular residential, if I run my main down the middle of the
So how do you
street,
move
every
that
house
if
has
you don't know
access.
whether or not?
It's kind of like a shared access easement is more or less. I see where Jeanette's at with it. Did you guys hear what she said?
No.
So basically, because of the access points, that's why it's dedicated as a sewer easement. So they can reach us, basically.
I think that no matter what, we need more information.
And if he does, if that is his private easement, that's part of his property, then I don't think we need to deal with the PUD at all, because it's not affecting anything in the PUD. Because the start of the new easement is the same as the start of the old easement, and the end of it's the same as the end. And it doesn't cross into the area east of lot 4. Or it does. Where he ran it does. So it's not his problem where he ran it. He's still granting an easement to where it should have been ran. So if he does that, that's all on his property. If that belongs to him, if that easement's his and no longer part of the PUD, he doesn't need a public hearing. We could okay it.
How long do we have to advertise a special meeting in between meetings?
Oh, I thought it was 10. I thought it was 10 days. I could be.
I was gonna say
wrong on
10
it.
days, but it could be 2 weeks. I'm not positive on that.
I think it's. What's that, Bill?
It's 10 days, I believe.
That's what I was usually 10 days.
And I just want to interject again, it does say that it is a sanitary sewer easement. That's what that SSE stands for. I'm looking at the proposed one on page 2. But I believe even on page 1, it says original existing 10-foot SSE. So that, again, that was just for sanitary sewer, not, it was not allowing any other utility to run through that, the easement in question. So, and the same thing with the new one. It's only intended for sanitary sewer.
So question for you, Jeanette.
Okay.
No, that's a tenant for that. These are still private laterals. Do they necessarily have to be in that easement?
I would think that to protect the owner of lot 4 from, neighbors, just saying what you just said, that, the owner of lot 3 is being nice at this point, since he really has a sanitary easement, sanitary lateral running across his property, not in an easement. So, I mean, I believe a new easement is needed just for the protection of all parties. But I don't know how to answer the question of, is it something that can be taken care of just by, the owner of lot 3, if it has to go through, your public hearing, so.
So I think we could do a motion that pending documentation that he is the owner of the easement and not the PUD, that we change the easement to the new easement. And on a counter, if he is not, then we hold a public hearing for it. Rather, or go with a special meeting.
So you're saying like that one of these two could make a motion to vacate and or move.
I would say
An existing
vacate
easement.
the old and move it to the new, to exhibit B. Pending his documentation that he's the owner of the easement. If not, it's gonna be Pat who needs to make that. And then,
Right, but if the motion's made, then we, like, at least it's made and if.
It's made, and if
Still
he
have a
brings it
public
in,
hearing,
we-
it's not gonna be pushed anything beyond next month.
right,
Either way, doesn't everybody have to be notified within 300 feet if you change it, even if it is his own easement?
yes.
Yes.
So either way, we have to have the public hearing.
So we hold the public, yes, but it depends on whose right is it to
Right.
hold it. So I mean, I guess the easement could be holding a public hearing either on his request, if he brings in the documentation, or on Mr. Clahy's request after Jack talks to him.
Or if I own it, then it's on, then I'll,
Then it's on you, yeah.
and we still have to, even if I own it.
We still have to,
have a public
because
hearing.
you're moving an easement, so we have to have a public hearing. But I think that would cover us the best. If this is truly documented that it's his, then we can just go ahead with him as the
Don't have that document signed, do you?
person.
It's at home.
If not,
I didn't think we'd be in this, but it's okay.
And I'm sure, I mean, if somebody could get a hold of Mr. Clay and tell him that he's willing to do all the work, Mr. Clay just needs to make the petition. To move it. It shouldn't, either way, we should be able to go to public hearing next month and get this thing done.
You want to start over on that motion again?
Yeah.
So
So
I
I'm
think,
gonna take back my second.
And I'll take back my motion.
So let's try this one again.
To vacate and for relocate set.
that makes sense, because we'll cover both of them, so if whoever has that authority can set the public hearing.
So we'll try this again. So I move that we set this for public hearing at our next meeting, pending finding out who owns the easement. And depending on who owns the easement, whether it be Mr. Henry or the developer of lot of Babcock Second Division Phase One, which we believe is Mr. Clay or his representative, would yeah, thank you, I'm not lost, would be allowed to vacate and or remove the easement for use.
Think so?
Relocate you're relocating the,
Vacate and relocate. Oh, second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? We got that right?
I just want to make sure that what I'm asking Mr. Clay is if he's responsible for the utility easement or is Mr. Henry responsible? That's the question I'm asking him tomorrow.
Are we going, do you have easy access to that paperwork that you can find it in the morning? Or do you have the ability to do that?
That's
I'm
gonna
just-
be, that's gonna be my wife, because we live at the in-laws house, and I don't know where everything's at.
Okay, I'm just asking because, I mean, I would think that it would be best for you to check your paperwork before we reach out to Pat.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't wanna cause, any issues between anybody, so maybe if we halt talking to Pat pending,
Yeah,
wait,
that's fine.
maybe for Mr.
We'll
Henry
do that.
to reach out to you,
You'll
Jack.
contact me when you got that paperwork.
Yeah.
But I would also say that our building commissioner needs to investigate the paper trail in
100%.
that file.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Well, it has to
I
be done,
understand.
we have to know,
yes,
because
Yeah, why are we in this situation?
right,
That shouldn't
Exactly.
have happened, I mean. That just shouldn't have.
Any discussion?
anymore.
Yeah, Mr. President, the only thing I would add, this is basically an act of kindness here, asking to go through with this. I would ask that the fee for the public hearing be waived.
I guess my question on that would be, is that a motion you're making, or do I need a motion for that?
I don't know how the process would work, but
We would need a motion for that, but I think you have to wait till we vote on this one unless Sarah wants to amend her motion and add that to.
Vote on this one, then
Yeah.
make another motion.
And yes, sounds good.
Roll call,
Loving.
Michelle.
Nick Loving,
yes,
Sarah Aldman,
yes,
Roseanne Bozak,
Yes.
Jeremy McCard.
Yes.
so Mr. President, I would make a motion that if the responsibility for the public hearing falls on Mr. Emery, that the fee for the public hearing be waived.
second,
Well, the fee for.
Okay, Nick made a motion, Sarah made a second. Any discussion? Roll call, Michelle.
Roseanne Bozak,
Yes.
Nick Loving,
Yes,
Sarah Aldman,
yes.
Jeremy McCard.
Yes.
That's better than you.
Thanks for your patience.
Don't worry, the rest of these is going to take 5 minutes.
Yeah, hopefully. Am I good to go?
I wish we could have done more, I just wanted,
I get it.
we're trying to move this along.
Yes,
as
we're doing
quickly
your
as
job.
possible.
I get it. I appreciate it. Yeah.
219-628-5980.
Okay, I'll be waiting for your call.
Well, you got my number.
Yeah.
We give you this one. Just write it on there.
Bill, thank you for all your input.
Yes, appreciate that.
I don't know if we gotta, yeah, slowly through that.
We'll do it.
Want to make sure that you guys know that those are private laterals, so that you and we understand that.
Right.
That's what all the confusion was.
Mhm.
When we investigated this before.
Okay, we're on backtrack, old business, storage container fees.
Actually, I think that was Mr. Brazil. And I looked back at our old minutes and it said that our attorney was going to look at the wording on the fee table and see if that adequately covered our, the possibility of a residential use zone having a storage container. No, sorry, let me say it again. In a that any zone that would have a residential use, that property might be able to have a storage container if granted a variance by the BZA, if that would allow us to charge the same as all the others for their permit.
Yeah, so I looked at it, I believe it would, it should just resort back because they're all equal.
Okay, but when I looked at the table,
Okay,
I have the table right here.
it's very specific on the wording. It's construction containers, a temporary use for commercial containers, long-term use for commercial containers. I don't know that we never intended to have a fee for a residential use because the intent was not. to have-
there wouldn't be any in there, but if they granted it,
Yes,
then what would the fee be?
yes.
I said, so I think after looking at it, it should just go along with all the other fees. So
Even
what-
though they say commercial
Even
or
though,
construction,
right. I mean, is that, you think the hang up is because it says commercial in there?
and construction, we're very specific.
Okay, so what if they grant the
Variance.
variance to have one in residential, then the use of it would be to do what? Like, are they getting it for long-term storage? But it's still saying commercial.
What if we just got rid of commercial? So then we're just talking about shipping containers and if there's,
I think
If it's
that's go back
used-
for a public hearing.
do what?
I think we have to take it back for public hearing.
But yeah,
Public hearing.
Well, I'm just saying though, but if there's an issue and we gotta address it somehow, that's my question.
Yes,
Like unless somebody else has a thought or any idea. I mean, if we just remove commercial, would that fix everybody's issues? That way technically they would have, if a variance was granted, they would have a spot that would fit that variance for fees.
right,
Because it'd be for long-term use. I mean, I assume if somebody's getting a variance for a shipping container, it's not to use it for 10 days. Because,
No, it's something that's already existing and they want to keep it there.
and I understand that.
yeah, so the word commercial, yeah, so,
and construction,
Well, it's not a different one.
yes.
construction.
This is construction, this is long-term commercial.
But for construction, if they were using it for construction, that could fit in residential.
Yeah, that's.
Right,
but
that's
they're not.
construction is
They want
only
to use it for
temporary.
storage.
Right, okay, so if they're using it just for the temporary use and the long-term use, we have to remove the commercial. I mean, their other option would be slashing it and put residential,
Right, but then that opens up to,
then people would add.
It ends up. If we're gonna change the
it
table
allows
anyway,
encouragement of having shipping containers.
Right, and if somebody sees that,
Right.
they're gonna wanna go, they'll be like, oh, if I can get it residential use, I'll come ask for variance.
yes,
So it would probably be most beneficial to remove commercial. If we're gonna allow variances in the in the residential districts, which we don't have control over.
Right.
The BZA does.
Right, but right now they don't have a way to apply a fee
A fee to it, it's.
if they do allow variance.
Right, so if they allow it, there, we can't really put a fee because it's not being used for a commercial purpose. I said that would be, the motion would be set a hearing to change that wording to.
If we're gonna have a hearing to change it, why don't, oh, no, never mind. Didn't say that. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because we're not just fixing wording, like if there was something
Right, those
sounded wrong.
punctuation.
It was not our original intent.
Right, but because that's, we intended it to be commercial because the intention wasn't to have it in residential at all. We'd have to just vote that to remove it.
So I make a motion to set a public hearing to remove the word commercial. So,
From long-term use,
long-term use, yes.
second.
Roseanne made a motion, Sarah made a second. Do we have any discussion?
Just quick, you don't want to include temporary use
Temporary use is already covered for residential.
because by moving past.
Yes.
Yeah, that's already, that's actually something that's allowable.
That's already in there, I forgot that's on the other side, okay.
Anybody have anything else? Roll call, Michelle.
Thank you, sir.
Roseanne Bozak,
Yes.
Nick Loving,
Yes.
Sarah Aldman,
Yes,
Jeremy Mahard.
Yes. All right, the next thing under old,
I've got something on storage containers. I was at the last, or by Zoom, I was at the last ZBA meeting, and I was just curious. And there's somebody did come for a variance for one of these containers in a residential area. Who informs them of what current ordinance is or what the planning commission's intent was? Is that by the people that are representatives or?
Wait, I don't know.
There was discussion about it, and one of the things was that his container's been there since 2018, which is when this whole process started. But none of that information was shared with the BZA members who asked, why is this just coming to us now? So I'm just wondering, is there any?
so I think part of that is that there was a lack of communication amongst the boards throughout the town. And that's why if you look on our meeting agenda, we actually have under communication bills and expenditures, town code updates now, which we've never had before. So like we've had issues where it's been like, hey, did that get passed? Like, we do all this stuff and then we send it to the council, and unless you actually attend or watch the council meeting, you don't know if your work is actually
Exactly.
put into place.
Right.
So now I think that's the purpose of having that here,
So is that
so that we
all
can have,
agenda?
Michelle, can you comment on that? Yes. So that's on all agendas, but now this is new for February of 2022.
Okay.
There was nothing prior to that as far as with that communication. I think now it'll be, hey, there was a shipping container ordinance that was approved by the town council, which was developed by the planning commission. I would assume the BZA would be notified of that and they'd be like, ooh, I might need to read that.
Because that was, they had old code and didn't have a clue what the shipping container ordinance was.
Right,
Like, I don't-
and that's
Yeah, and they have since gotten that.
Okay,
part of the issue with like operating off a hard copy of the book as opposed to going online, because and we don't know what all the other boards are doing all the time, but the purpose of this, I think, having that in our agenda should fix this moving forward.
okay.
Because
So I
we should get
thought maybe you had
notifications.
added that to there. That was what-
No, it was, honestly, I had nothing to do
No,
with it.
it has to do with just some restructuring that the council is putting
Okay,
in place
good.
in all the departments to help clean up communication across the board.
Creating
Okay.
manuals of people's jobs.
Okay,
Are you done? There you go. Come on.
no, I think that was it.
Okay, old business, grass, sod, and landscaping. I'm flying kind of solo because Nicole's not here, but
What that's about is over the woodlands, we've got on Babcock, we have a property that just received a temporary, not a temporary, but a occupancy permit, but not a full one because they didn't have sod and grass in the front of the backyard, so they had to pay a fee. They do not want to put sod in the front yard because it's in the wetlands. They want to be able to do river rock and grow flowers and stuff and not put, and according to our codes in our town, we do not allow it. They have to have so much sod, they have to have a tree, et cetera, et cetera. This was not looked into further, so they're asking for something to be put in place so that come spring, they're not gonna have to put sod there. So that's what this is about.
okay, so I'm clear. So what actually happened is this was assigned to me and Nicole by Eric Hall when he was still on board. And we started going through it, and I remember they were talking about some plant that they wanted to occupy their space of their front lawn with, as opposed to putting sod in.
Right.
And while I 100% understand their specific individual circumstance, I think I can speak, or I'm gonna speak for myself at least. When we were going through this, for us to develop a comprehensive list of every plant that would be allowed and not allowed within the town of Burns Harbor to plant in your front, side, and or rear lawn, I think would be an undertaking that, if you think it would be 3 times as big as what our current town code is. Because there's an amount of species of plants that is unreal. So my suggestion, because this is a individual request that is varied from what our normal circumstances, that I don't know that there's a circumstance that fits going to the BZA better than this specific situation. Because it is the epitome of having a variance from the norm.
I agree.
And the other thing that I ran into, and this is just from a little bit of my background, is even if we tried to like name specific grasses that we approve or what have you for a front lawn, the problem you run into there is the minute somebody develops a hybrid type grass that we don't have listed, we're now in a constant flux of setting a public hearing to add a new hybrid type of turf fescue, Bermuda, whatever. And it'd be a never ending process. That's my biggest issue with it. I don't know how we can cover it for each individual instance. And I don't think it's something that this board should probably be moving forward with. But I also think that with Nicole not here, that I'd rather probably set this back to old business for next month. But I did want any input if anyone had any suggestions on it. Like if there's something that I'm missing that I'm not seeing, but I just think trying to cover the amount of time it's gonna take to research every plant to see if that spreads and takes over too much, or I mean, it's easy to find what plants work well in this climate, and that's not a problem, but what would make good lawn, and at that point, it's still just my opinion.
But too, Jeremy, you're looking at changing the code, which, like I said, was gonna be near impossible because of the number of species regardless. But it is a perfect BZA thing because it's gonna be individual, somebody coming asking for specific. If they want this specific plant, that could give a BZA to appoint people to go look at that plant, see if that's acceptable for that species of plant, whatever it happens to be. And anytime somebody comes, it's always most likely gonna be something different. So if it's a new hybrid, if it's new, right, whatever, let the BZA deal with that on an individual basis. They're better suited for that, I think, than trying to cover it and then inevitably missing something and having to go back and try to change it like we had to on smaller projects. Alone, something that can cover every species.
I agree that I don't think we want to get into those kind of specifics, but I do think that we should determine what do we want basic standards to be. Even if it's not going to be sod, or if it, if it's do we feel like along a ditch, for instance, that it needs to have so many feet of grass in order to maintain the ditch?
Well, I think that actually, like, if it's in a ditch, I think that comes into kind of erosion control where you have to have. I mean, like, planting has to be planted for that reason.
Right, but if, for instance, you got some other plant and you have to maintain your ditch bank, do you have access through the flower bed? Or, you know, I'm just saying, we're gonna have to look at what the basic standard we want for everybody in town, not just for one specific lot. I know you can go to BZA for this, but we also, if we're going forward, looking at, and you have to have sod everywhere, or whatever, what are the basics that we do want to include?
And I think that, like, if we, as a board, if you guys kind of just thought of little things, I mean, I have no problems with me and Nicole still running with this. I just think that a little bit of input, now that we know that we're not gonna approach every type of plant, if we can just approach individualized things like, Jack, I don't know if you have an opinion on this as far as if. Like, I like the idea that in a subdivision that we're requiring sod on front lawns. But I don't necessarily know if you have an opinion, like, when somebody's just building a house on Babcock or US Highway 20. If you think that they should have a full sodded front lawn.
Well, there's other things that come into play besides the sod and the grass. You have to have so much land versus so much building. That all plays into it too, but by I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that we can't look at every species. We're not gonna sit there and say you can plant this type of plant or not. I think basically, like Sarah was saying, be able to put, other than sod, be able to put river rock or some type of woodscape or landscape that's going to fit into a wetlands. Whether we address that just separately for wetlands and not for residential areas or RC2 or whatever it might be, it would just be for the wetland area. Because how much of it do we have? We have it there, we have it in commercial, but do we need to address it just as the wetlands? That would be my.
Well, I think that's one thing we probably can't address, because I don't think we can authorize the modification of wetland.
Right.
But like, I get,
So, you know what I'm
like,
saying is.
yeah, the surrounding area that's not contained within.
Right.
Like something of that nature, I think that would be fine.
So right now, is there any ordinance saying exactly that you have to have sod in the front yard?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we have, that it requires sod and seed.
Okay.
And right now, they didn't get it.
Subdivision, right?
What?
No, it's anything for a term.
Anywhere, okay. That's what Jack said subdivision said, I wasn't sure if it was different, you know, if you're on Babcock for 20.
No, it's still Burns Harbor, it's just
Right.
that it's a PUD for the wetlands.
But I think that Jeremy, for some input, I think that we could put in the ordinance that invasive species would not be allowed.
Right.
And that there are official lists of those, even by the state, of what's an invasive species.
And we did have, like, we were given a resource by Shem, and we also, Nicole found some other stuff through the dunes that listed some certain plants and stuff like that. And I think we can, if we're gonna make a modification to the town code, that we could add that in there as far as for references for people to, hey, you can seek this out, there's a lot of information, but not necessarily like, use this plan, like, because it's gonna guide you into what is good and isn't good for our environment. That's at least our region. So I honestly think at this point though, like, we're just gonna kind of push this and keep this, set it on the agenda for next month for grass side and landscaping. So we can have a little more discussion on it. But I think there is stuff to be changed there. It's just not gonna be plant by plant basis.
No, absolutely.
And I think that's how it was originally, that's how me and Nicole looked at it at first, and like, at first when we were talking about grasses, it was cool, and then it was like, wait a minute. No, like, there's just too many. Because somebody will just change a letter on it and have a hybrid seed, there's too many variations of everything at this point. So. Any other discussion on that? All right, moving on to new business. I have reviews of bonds, maintenance guarantees, letters of credit.
And that was gonna give us a report about that clean out of the
So I did get a chance, I'm sure she's still on here, but I did get a chance to see her letter, which indicated that he had performed the work on that clean out and I had a photo of it. And I believe the recommendation was to release him of the bond when it expired. Jeanette, did you have anything else you wanted to comment on that?
No, you summarized it, well. Yeah, there is, in that letter, there is a photo, and the manhole is clean. So, I'm fine with letting the bond expire.
Awesome, thank you very much. Do what? No?
I don't know.
Okay. The only other thing under new business was Matt Emery, and obviously we took care of that. And now I got good of the order and any other business.
You want me to come back in?
Huh?
Probably don't. I already talked to that.
Oh, I mean, if you got something to add, absolutely, like,
Yeah.
you know what, we're finally to you under.
That's
Go right ahead.
That's not gonna be around for months, he said.
Okay,
His wife's really ill.
did he indicate
He
whether?
said, I own it. And I
Okay.
said, are you sure?
I
He
as
said,
in Pat or I as in
No,
you?
me. He
Okay.
said, no, you own it. It's a private lot and you bought it.
Is
He
that
said
what
if they need
the
them-
document- Does it document that in that paper that you have?
No, that's for the Indiana American Water easement. So that's a different
Getting
one.
documentation.
So all he said, he goes, I can just send a letter to them saying that he motions it. He goes, I don't care, whatever you want.
You know what? I got it. This is easy. Either he makes it, or he just gets Pat to sign that letter that allows him to do the affidavit that we have. Then it gives him the power on both ends.
The POA.
Right, the power. That's included in the packet that we get
The
out.
public hearing.
We'll just have him fill that out when he makes, and then we can just hold the hearing under him and making it,
And just have him sign that.
and have him sign the letter saying that, you know, as far as he knows, he's the owner, but he's also acting on his behalf if the PUD still owns it. Just do both, it'll cover us both ways, and then we can just go on with the final hearing.
Michelle, are you good with all that, or do you have questions for him in regards to that?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
So I don't need to make any phone calls tomorrow.
Nope, no, you're good.
So actually, I do
You
have
don't
one.
have to pull out the
That's not pull
file
the
and
file.
fix the paper trail.
You don't have to pick up the phone then.
I do have a question. So he needs to give me the power of attorney
Right,
form
he'll-
filled out.
there's a form that you have.
Yes.
He has to get Pat to sign and have notarized,
Okay,
that authorizes him to act on behalf of Babcock Phase 1.
okay,
And then he'll send a letter with it too that says, you know, that he's, as far as he knows, he's Mr. Henry's the owner of the easement. However, if it is still owned by Babcock Phase 2, then he's acting as his representative.
okay.
And then, you know. so-
Yeah, I mean, we covered-
Yeah.
Yeah, they should be able to cover both bases, and there'll be no question like, well, who should
So
be.
now both are here, and it's covered since no matter what, he can act on both his own and as Pat Clagy's representative.
Okay, got it.
So do that, have that letter, have that power of attorney.
And then he still has to do everyone within 300 feet.
Yes,
Okay,
so do the public hearing stuff, all the same.
All the rest of the
Okay.
steps.
Okay, perfect. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
I have two things to review the ordinance.
I'm glad you're there. Go ahead.
All right, the first one is, as I was looking at the fee table, and I was reminded again, does anybody know why we have two different permit fee schedules for residential and RC1? It ends up being $150 more for the permit for an RC1 based on a 1,500 square foot house on a basement, an unfinished basement.
As opposed to RC2 and,
No, R and RC1, which are our main residential areas.
right,
Uh-huh.
So if you're building in Cortland Landing, your permit for the same house is $150 less than if you're building in the village of Burns Harbor. And I don't see why there's any difference in inspections or amount of work or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm just wondering why that is.
Oh, because it's downtown district.
No, it's not, RC1 is.
But it's an RC2,
But like,
RC2
so
is
are we talking about the
residential.
17 cents? Is that the issue?
Okay, so it's, here it's 20 cents per square foot or 25 cents per square foot. 12 cents per square foot unfinished and 17 cents per square foot unfinished.
What's the difference? I should know the answer to this.
Well, this is
What's the
just-
difference between R and RC1?
Residential, commercial, and residential. So R would be residential only, RC1 would be residential,
And then
commercial,
what's the difference between RC1 and RC2?
different types of commercial.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so,
I just looked at
No,
RC2,
yeah.
so RC1 is
This-
the different, okay.
okay, could we make the two zones for residential the same cost? And if you have a commercial, then it goes to this.
I see what you're saying, like have a,
It doesn't make sense that the same house to be built in two different neighborhoods.
so it would be two sets of fees, RC1 as residential, RC1 as commercial.
So I agree with how you're looking at it. But my thing would be if the property is, if it's zoned for RC1 and its only intended use is for residential. Because otherwise, potentially, he could be inspecting a multi-level property that then could have sprinkler systems and this, that, and the other, because it's for the commercial, like,
That's
let's say,
commercial.
but it's RC.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Put
But-
the commercial
but what
down here and say residential use only here. Or you could say single family.
But then you're getting in 1 stories into 3 stories.
Yeah, but here's my question though. So if I build the same house in residential and then I turn around and I buy property in RC1 and build the same exact structure. Why should I pay more for the permit for this structure
That's right.
than this one? And they're both gonna be only used for residential.
And there's,
I understand where you're saying like, if it is, and that's why I was saying that if you were gonna make if you were gonna build in RC1 and it had any commercial use at all, so like maybe it was half apartment and half commercial use, then at that point I would say absolutely it should be the higher fees because I would assume that you're gonna have more things to inspect and more things to deal with if it's got some commercial use, right? Because you may have sprinkler systems and other things you have to deal with. Then I'm okay with that higher fee, but I don't think somebody should have to pay more money to build the same residential structure that we would allow in residential. Is this something that we'd like to work on?
I can. Theoretically, it's simple.
So, yeah,
Don't
Sure, right,
yourself,
like-
Sarah.
can we confine you to this page?
I'm very confined.
Don't look past this.
You're gonna have to put it in my hand then. Yeah, I will work on that.
Did anyone else have any input, Nick, on that at all, or are you good with that?
I'm okay with that.
And my second good of the order is I was wondering, I know we talked about the businesses being notified about the outside storage for business property. Has that gone ahead? Have they been notified?
It's in the process right now. What I'm ending up doing is I'm gonna go into each section. Right now I'm dealing with, because there's so many different, right now I'm in RC and pilot in that area there. I'm dealing, because each area resident, depending on what zone they're in, I'm dealing zone by zone because there's so many of them out there.
I think that they need to be notified all at once.
They're gonna be notified, but again, I'm sending out letters. I have to go take pictures. I have to write down where they're at, and then I have to come up with a letter that has to be.
I'm not talking about a violation. I'm just saying a general notice to the businesses, because we've had businesses that want to have outside property storage and we're not allowed. Just saying, this is a new ordinance, this may affect your business, please be aware. If you have outside business property, then you need to come to get a permit. Then if you're doing the violations, doing its own liability pictures and all that, that's different, I think. But I just think as a courtesy to our businesses,
I
that,
agree, to send it out, to send it out.
yeah.
Are you saying to send it to every business or just the businesses that are already either in violation or?
No,
have-
every
I was
business.
just courtesy
Okay.
to everybody, if.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
checking.
They
You
all
wanna
have a
say something
business
now,
license.
now when they don't have a display and they come springtime and they put their display up and just
Right.
get the violation.
Yeah, it's just a little nicer.
Yeah, just send it to everybody.
And there are people that may like to utilize that option now. And it would also get rid of the, well, if this has been in effect that long, why am I just doing that
I agree, so
Well, here's
completely.
one I code. Ordinance.
now?
Unfortunately, due to COVID, none of this stuff works.
Do we need a motion on that?
I don't think so. I'm not setting policy or anything. Just making a request. Jack, did you need any help with that? Like, is there anything that you need in order to like? Would you need us to help like get a letter drafted?
Yeah, and that would be wonderful to help me with that.
And then do we
And I'll make sure
have,
it gets out to all the businesses, yes.
okay, so you'll have a full list of the businesses that
I
way.
have a full list of all the businesses, yes.
Okay, so you just want like,
I just need a letter that's going to state that what you just said, that the town council has passed an ordinance requiring,
No, I wouldn't say requiring, it's
or
saying
that
that
there's not,
there's a new ordinance.
new ordinance about outside storage containers and attach the ordinance to it.
We'd like your business to know about it if you want to take advantage of this.
I don't know about put the word advantage in there, but I mean.
Well, yeah, yeah.
If you would like to utilize that business outside storage for your business.
This is going around it.
Michelle,
Yes,
do you think that you and I can maybe throw something together tomorrow?
yes.
Awesome. So we'll try and get that together and get you a copy of the letter.
Thank you.
If you wanna send an email out to the board. Notes get mailed out, so that way we're all aware.
Yeah, I'll make sure that that letter, what we're stating here was sent out to everybody, yes. That's one thing I've been told by my liaison, make sure that anything that goes on,
Well, I just need to let us know when they're sent out,
yes,
so we can know when to expect any,
feedback.
yes.
You want to throw something on there about the shipping container ordinance too?
Yeah, we'll
One
draft
letter,
it.
two
So
things.
we'll draft the letter and I'll send it out to us first before I send it over. And if you guys have any issues or input, then we can make modifications. So
Sounds good.
expect that tomorrow.
Yes, that sounds good.
The only other thing I have, like me personally, is I'd like to welcome back Roseanne to our board and
Welcome, Roseanne. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yes, I'm like, I asked you earlier, I'm like, are we in person? Because Wednesday we're not in person.
And then Nick Lovey, welcome. I don't know if you ever sat on this board before, because if you did, it was prior to my time, but welcome.
I have not. You just witnessed my rookie season.
There's first time for everything, kind of like being president up here.
You did a magnificent job, Jeremy. Thank you for taking over.
By fire, we're gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Roseanne Bozak,
Yes, please.
Nick Loving,
No.
Easy for you to say, you're probably in your pajamas.
Sarah Aldman,
Yes.
Jeremy Mahard.
Absolutely. Meeting adjourned.
Enjoy your evenings. Take care.